I love that. Being able to, persuade and get some key stakeholders to support you and, and then to be able to review the plan. I think that that's great. And so now the fun one is really the unplanned change. And if I recall correctly, and I just wanted to call out, you're in what company are you with now?
I'm with Silicon Valley Bank currently, so I understand unplanned change very well very well too.
I was I've got an audience and they know about the SVB stuff. And so when we talk about question number 2 here, right, which is what are a couple of unplanned change, I may have an idea on one of them that you may share, but give us some examples of that and how we navigate that, right? Unplanned change is a little tougher.
Yeah, unplanned change is a little tougher, and it's also about that, best laid plans kind of trope that's out there, right? And you move forward and something just sideswipes you. And I would say my first example there is the Silicon Valley Bank collapse. And March 10th was catastrophic for me and my peers for a lot of different reasons. Our roles, like it did not exist. Our company did not exist on that day. And we went through a pretty intense and chaotic 20 days
Oh, yeah.
of just getting an understanding, the closure, connecting with the regulators, and getting a plan to move forward. So I would say, like, right out the gate, when something like that happens, you have to really go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Like, what are the most basic things that I need? I need to hydrate, I need to eat, I need to sleep, and I need to kind of take care of myself. And then for a person like myself, going into crisis management mode is actually almost pretty easy. I can put blinders on and just look at what needs to be done in this moment, and the rest will get figured out at some point down the road. In that first early days of a catastrophic change or a big event.
Right.
Now, doesn't matter if it's a failure of a bank or a layoff, or quite frankly, in a personal life, like the loss of a parent or something, or someone in your family. Like we get hit with this stuff over the span of our lifetimes, and we have to be able to kind of navigate through it. We don't have to always do that gracefully, but I do have some thoughts on kind of maybe some tips and tricks to make it a little bit easier.
That's great.
You have the absence of the plan.
That's right. That's right.
Something happens, but that doesn't mean that you don't have some things that you can do to prepare yourself for when an unplanned change happens. So we talked a little bit about stakeholders, and we talked already a little bit about support, but cultivating and growing relationships in your community of support so that when you have an unplanned change is super important. I have a core group of really great girlfriends that will drop in on a Zoom. They have done it for me multiple times when I'm struggling with something and I literally just need to have a virtual happy hour or a commiseration session, or just some of that kind of support that you need when you're going through something big. And getting those relationships and that support system, I think, are important for all of us just in our day-to-day lives. But when you have an unplanned change, they become super critical for you to be able to lean on them.
Absolutely.
And I would say, I think a lot of people have heard about fight or flight in response to something big, but there's also the fawn response. And that's when you kind of get paused.
Ooh, right.
Because change is hitting you and you don't, it's not you're not taking off, you're not running away, and you don't have the fight quite in you yet, but you're just kind of stunned. That deer in the headlights. I think the fawn is maybe that's intentional. I don't know. But yeah, it probably is. Give yourself permission to hit the pause button. I know I did. I had, right after the bank failed, I went ahead and cocooned myself a little bit and kept my support system close, and just kind of out of that immediate crisis mode, gave myself just some space to not make any big decisions. But I did anchor against that wasn't going to be permanent. I gave myself permission to pause And then a few months later was like, okay, now we got to figure out and navigate forward. And that's all right. I mean, as long as you're in a safe space
Yeah.
for whatever the plan change is, you can give yourself a bit of breathing room to be able to kind of figure out what your next steps and then be intentional about it. You can also give yourself space to be sad about something. I mean, I was in a fantastic role. I was leading HR transformation with Silicon Valley Bank. I was in our second deployment of really large technical changes to enable self-service and processing for HR to really take a lot off of the plate of the business and the employees of that company. And that just evaporated in the span of an email at 8:15 in the morning from the FDIC. I mean, like that, you have to also give yourself like just and acknowledge that it's okay to mourn that.
Right.
And then, it's okay to, if you have, I don't know, I go back to just because again, some personal experience. If you go back, like if you have the death of a parent, which I also experienced in 2023,
Yeah.
you also have to give yourself the opportunity to kind of mourn and just not isolate, but just self-contain yourself and allow yourself to feel your feelings. That's, I think, super important.
Of that, let that be the present environment so you can get through the pain, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And then, but I think there's something about unplanned change and something I think in our current culture and environment that should be talked about more, and that's being able to build resiliency. There are resilient people, and there are people that you look at that have dealt with a lot and that that they can kind of hit things head on. And then there are people that get like just blown with the wind, right? They don't have that resilience. And I'm a firm believer that resilience can be learned. It can be a learned behavior. Um, but there are some things that like I like to do to kind of build that resiliency mindset or remember that I have it because it's an internal muscle. It's how we survive harsh things. But one of those first kind of steps in that is to remember that you have survived things previously. I mean, if you get to a few decades of your life, you've probably experienced a couple of bumps along the way. And so yeah, right. So when you hit something that is unplanned, like a layoff or a company collapse or personal upheaval in your life, remember that you've been through some tough things before, and how can you and know that you can do that again. And then I do think that this one's hard in terms of building resilience, but making room in your life for the unexpected.
Mhm.
So I think you and I talked about this previously. I envision that our capacity in life is kind of like this bucket. And you have, things that intentionally take your capacity every single day in just functioning as a human being. You have personal relationships, you have a job, you may have pets, you have responsibilities in your home and your house and out in the world. And those things all suck your capacity. You got to remember to pay the registration on your car. You got to do the adult things. Those are all going to be, that those are going to be strains on your capacity. And then there's the stuff that, emotional and others that are going to just kind of come with different experiences that may be unexpected strains in your capacity. If that bucket is already full to the very top of your day, like you don't have enough space between work, life, and everything else of all your responsibilities, something unexpected happens, you don't have the space to be able to take that in. That bucket becomes overfilled by that extra drop, and then it just all spills over. So how can you create space in your life for the really loud moments? And that looks different for everybody, but I do want to kind of try to convey that message. I think that's important in change in general, is that you give yourself the room, because if we're overloaded, we don't have a lot of patience for new things. And we may not know what's coming, but we can prepare for when something does happen, that at least we know we've got the resilience below, or inside.
And so
Um,
we would basically figure out a way to clear our bucket, right? To keep,
yeah. What is the noise that in that, or what are the strains on that capacity that's not needed? Obviously, you have to pay the registration on your car because you're going to get in trouble or something. But, but there are a lot of things that we do in our day to day. Like so I'll make it about me because it's about me right now, I guess. Um, but I have this like, I have this default of everything needs to be put away. Everything needs to be in its place. Well, that is an easy thing that if something gets overloaded, I can let the piles sit for a little bit around my house, right? I mean, no one's hurt if I leave the mail on the counter. No one's hurt if the laundry is going to need a couple more days to get done. There are spaces in our lives where we can kind of trim in that bucket to make space for other things. And we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. And that's what I mean. Like, okay, where can you make room in that self-desired pressure, or create boundaries with others that are taking that capacity from you? That's important too, because you may have a very demanding relationship in your life where maybe some boundaries would be really healthy to put into place so that you again can have some extra capacity. So those are the types of things that I mean.
Okay, great. I like that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, here's the thing about unplanned change that I know. You're exactly right. It literally is about, um, hopefully your bucket isn't full. And I love the way you kind of explain that if your bucket is full, it's going to be the one drop. But, being able to be proactive to keep that bucket cleared out, I think is important. Pay your bills, take care of your family, take care of yourself, these type of things where the bucket is not filled with stuff that you can control, I think,
Right.
will contribute to that as well. But
And it's important in that fawn phase to recognize where you're at, but don't stop living your life either. So sometimes we can be like, this has just happened to me. I need to like freeze. I need to not do anything. And therefore, I'm not going out with my friends because I need to save money. Well, you can go find something to do that doesn't require a significant strain on your wallet, right? Like you can conserve money, but you should still go out and do the things that make your life what it is. Because I mean, in the SVB crash, I mean, it would be like, oh, am I going to actually receive a paycheck in that situation? And so that is terrifying, right? And thankfully, I was in a really good position to be able to get those answers to employees and be actively part of making sure that there was going to be a paycheck funded by some entity at some point in time. And we got through that. But I got to this point, I would say, so March, so about May, I got through my fawn phase, and I was like, you know what? Prior to the bank failure, I was about to buy a house,
right.
and I was ready financially to buy the house that you're seeing me in today. And I had to make a decision once we were acquired by First Citizens of Raleigh, North Carolina, that okay, I got that paycheck coming back in. I can do this. I need to not stop my life. And yes, there's a lot of change in front of me. What's my role? How am I going to contribute to this new employer? All of that stuff were still open questions in the May timeframe. But I needed to keep living my life. And I want to give anybody out there that's receiving unplanned change kind of in their space that, maybe you were actively evaluating whether or not you wanted to even stay wherever you were laid off or let go, or the company itself reconfigured and it's no longer aligned with where you were going at developmentally. You can still kind of like take a step back and be like, okay, where was I? Where do I want to be? What's that value, right? Back to the plan change, and then start to like go back to the steps that you would have done in a plan change environment. So I do think that it's important to feel your feelings in the moment. It's important to like give yourself some grace and surround yourself by trusted allies, and then reset, re-anchor, and pivoting requires that anchor, right? So what is here, and where do I want to go? I was talking with a colleague actually earlier today, and that anchor is super important. Maybe it's a person, maybe it's a goal that you have in your personal life, maybe it's a financial destination that you want to hit. It doesn't have to be it can be whatever you need it to be ultimately. But if you have that anchor, it helps you surround your decisions going forward based on what that anchor is. And, and I knew for me personally that I was ready and that I needed that, I wanted to get back to home ownership. I wanted to get back to all of the house projects that have actually overwhelmed me for like the last 6 months. But I was personally ready for that. And so I knew that I needed to kind of continue to move on with my life. And then the rest of this stuff would start to fall into place because I had made that decision. That was my anchor, and that's how I was going to move forward.